The Ottoman navy in the Mediterranean and Protestant England posed major challenges to Spanish power. This struggle culminated in the disastrous failure of the Spanish Armada in 1588, when storms, logistical failures, and effective English naval tactics shattered Spain's supposedly invincible fleet. This defeat marked a major psychological and strategic turning point. It exposed the limits of imperial overreach and signaled the beginning of a long, uneven decline, even as Spain continued to rule enormous territories and command immense resources. Despite retaining its colonial empire and vast inflows of silver into the 17th century, Spain entered a prolonged period of stagnation and decay. This decline was driven by structural weaknesses that wealth could not cure, including chronic inflation caused by dependence on precious metals, the neglect of domestic agriculture and manufacturing, rigid social hierarchies that glorified idle nobility over productive labor, and the expulsion or marginalization of skilled minorities. Spain's economy became increasingly reliant on foreign creditors, forcing the Spanish crown to declare bankruptcy multiple times while continuing to fund costly wars across Europe. This strain was compounded by administrative corruption and declining military effectiveness, which eroded Spain's dominance in the Netherlands and allowed rivals such as England, France, and the Dutch Republic to rise as naval and commercial powers. By the late 17th century, Spain had been reduced from a hegemonic force to a secondary European state. This decline was formalized by the War of the Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714, which followed the death of the last Habsburg king without an heir. The conflict engulfed Europe and ended with the Bourbon dynasty taking the Spanish throne under Philip V, while Spain lost significant European territories, including the Spanish Netherlands and much of Italy. These losses forced a strategic reorientation toward colonial administration and internal reform. During the 18th century, the Bourbon reforms attempted to modernize taxation, centralize authority, stimulate trade, and strengthen colonial control. While these reforms temporarily revitalized imperial revenues, they also alienated colonial elites and indigenous populations through heavier taxation and reduced autonomy. These tensions would later fuel revolutionary movements. Spain's vulnerability was fully exposed by the Napoleonic invasion of 1808, when French forces occupied Spain, deposed King Ferdinand VII, and plunged the peninsula into chaos during the Peninsular War. This event shattered the illusion of Spanish invincibility and severed effective metropolitan control over its overseas colonies. In response, Creole elites across Latin America formed juntas, challenged royal authority, and launched wars of independence inspired by Enlightenment ideals and earlier revolutions in America and France. These conflicts were led by figures such as Simon Bolívar in the north and José de San Martín in the south. Between 1810 and 1825, their campaigns dismantled Spanish rule across most of the Americas. Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, and others achieved independence through years of brutal warfare. As a result, Spain was stripped of nearly all its continental American possessions and reduced to a handful of remaining colonies, including Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and scattered Pacific islands. These territories became increasingly difficult to govern amid rising nationalism, economic dependency, and international pressure, particularly from the expanding United States. American intervention in the Cuban War of Independence escalated into the Spanish-American War of 1898, a short but decisive conflict in which Spain's outdated navy and exhausted state were quickly defeated. The war resulted in the loss of Spain's last major overseas colonies and marked the definitive end of the Spanish Empire as a global power after more than 4 centuries of expansion, conquest, administration, and decline. The legacy of the Spanish Empire remains deeply embedded in the modern world through the widespread use of the Spanish language, the enduring influence of Catholicism across continents, the cultural fusion of Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and the global systems of trade and governance it helped create. At the same time, it left behind a complex and often painful inheritance of colonial exploitation, demographic collapse, forced labor, and cultural erasure. The Spanish Empire stands as both a testament to the heights imperial ambition can reach and a warning of how overextension, rigid ideology, and failure to adapt can bring even the most powerful empires to their knees, proving that while Spain once ruled lands where the sun never set, history ultimately sets on all empires without exception.